Welcome to Hey, it's Carly Rae's Book Club. This is Book Hour where authors will talk their latest novels, reveal their writing process, and tell us if they have a favorite character. I'm your host, Carly Rae. Today we have Kieran Scott, who joins us to chat all about her new thriller, Wish You Were Gone, out now. We'll find out if Kieran always wanted to write a thriller, how she came up with the web of secrets in the plot, and if we can expect a sequel. We'll also find out more about Kieran's writing process. We'll dive in right after this. Welcome, Kieran. I'm so excited to have you on Book Hour.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, now tell us where you're joining us from.
I live in northern New Jersey, where it's about 32 degrees right now, and I will not be going outside today.
Now, Wish You Were Gone is your very first thriller you've published. Tell viewers more about it without giving away spoilers.
Oh, that's tough. So Wish You Were Gone, the way I always talked about it while I was writing it was I would tell friends, it's basically, the setup is a family wakes up in the middle of the night to a really loud noise. They go downstairs to find out what's going on, and they find the father/husband has crashed his car into the back of the garage and is dead. He's been crushed by the wall of the garage. And then the question becomes, was it an accident? Was it murder? He is an alcoholic, so at first they sort of assume that it was an accident, but as the book unfolds, you find out that there are little inconsistencies, little things off, and that in fact there are a lot of people who had a motive to see this person dead.
Now, the book is filled with many twists and turns. Do you have a favorite twist in Wish You Were Gone?
Do I have a favorite twist? I mean, I can't really say what it is without giving it away, but there's a family-based twist that I actually came up with pretty late in the writing of the manuscript that I was pretty darn proud of. It has to do with the kids and the family, but I won't say anything else other than that.
Okay. Now, Wish You Were Gone has multiple characters' point of views. When you were brainstorming ideas for the plot, did you always picture it with multiple characters' point of views?
Yeah, I did. I mean, that's my favorite sort of book to read. I'm a really big fan of Liane Moriarty's and other writers who kind of manage to have several unreliable narrators and really kind of misdirect you all over the place. And I always also, I've written a number of young adult novels as well, and I always enjoyed the ones where I got to be in different people's heads. I loved writing those a lot more because it allows me to be someone other than myself. Usually there's a character that's close to me, but then I get to explore characters who are very unlike me as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, one thing like Emma, James, their children, along with Gray, all have in common is not everything is as perfect as it may seem from the outside. Was that at the forefront of your thoughts when you went into writing Wish You Were Gone?
Always. It's funny because I think it's kind of a trope now, but it's also the way I grew up, and that was something I always wanted to explore. My family was volatile, similar to the family in the book, and it's interesting. I never really thought about it until I was older, but my mom and I used to talk about the fact that my dad would always fix things on the outside of the house, but never things on the inside of the house. So it was clear that it mattered more to him, the way that he presented himself outwardly, than keeping his family comfortable or feeling safe. So that was always something that I thought was interesting and wanted to explore.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you could pick one chapter, which one's your favorite?
Oh gosh, that's tough. There's a chapter early on that's in the son's point of view and Hunter's point of view that I really enjoyed writing. It's really short, but it's sort of a standoff between him and his dad. And it just felt very intense to me. It felt very emotional. Hunter's a character who really wants so badly to look up to his father, but he knows his father is eternally flawed. And it's a moment where he almost goes over the edge of thinking, you know what, maybe I don't need this type of person in my life, but doesn't quite get there. So I really enjoyed writing that scene.
Yeah. Now let's talk the characters. Are any of them based on people you know? And did you have a favorite? I know you mentioned maybe the dad's character.
Yeah, it's so the dad is very much based on my dad. My father was sometimes a really great dad and sometimes not. I think he got worse as we got older. But he was never physically abusive, but we were always scared when he got home because we never knew which father was coming home, like whether he was going to be the happy, nice dad or the drunk kind of angry dad. So that person was definitely based on my father. And then I will say that Emma, because of that, is based a bit on my mom and the relationship the two of them had. And there's pieces of one of my good friends in Gray. And I think she will not mind me saying that she's a person who always thinks she's right. She's one of my best friends, but she always thinks she's right. She knows it's a flaw. She's working on it. But that was part of Gray. But I took that piece of this friend and just blew it out in Gray. Like Gray is so 20 times bigger personality-wise than this friend. Other than that, I think Hunter's probably a lot like, he's kind of like a cross between me and my brother. And then Kelsey's kind of a cross between me and my sister. We had 3 kids in my family. This family only has 2. So I kind of amalgamized all of us.
Yeah. Now, did it make it hard writing the characters, like being close and like basing them off like your own relationships, or did it make it easier?
I think a little bit of both. I think it made it easier to imagine them physically and their, kind of the way that they gesture and the way that they stand and talk and all that kind of thing. It was a little more difficult. Obviously, I think like the emotional beats were a little bit more difficult just because it was digging up a lot of what we went through as kids. But I'm really glad I got it out there. I feel better now.
Yeah. Now, did you have an all-time favorite character?
It's funny. I think probably I enjoyed writing Gray more than anyone else because she's very different than me, and that's what it always is. I always enjoy writing the characters who are my polar opposites because what I basically do is when they come to a decision, I think of what I would do, and then I just have them do the exact opposite. And that's really fun to imagine and fun to write. It's very freeing. So I think Gray was my favorite.
Yeah. Now I'm curious to know, was the book always called Wish You Were Gone?
Oh my God, no. We had such a trial titling this book. You have no idea. It was first called Secrets Between Friends. Or actually, no, it was called The Family Secrets. Then it was called Secrets Between Friends. Then we sold it. And then somewhere along the line, the publisher at Gallery just said that they didn't think it was the strongest title. We went through, myself, my editor, and my agent, so many lists of titles until we couldn't understand the English language anymore. It was just ridiculous. I finally ended up having a top 10, and I did a Google form, and I sent the Google friends of mine who had read it. They're mentioned in the acknowledgments. So I had early readers who are also authors and editors. And I just had everybody vote. And we picked our favorite, and luckily the publisher liked it as well.
Yeah, that's one way to do it. Just put out a poll.
Exactly.
Now, what is it you hope readers take away from Wish You Were Gone?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, when you write a book like this, I think the thing that you really want people to take away is you want them to think, wow, I never saw that coming, right? That's always the goal. I also think, just from a personal standpoint, it would be nice if people took away that kind of that feeling of you can't assume that you know what's going on in everybody's households. You can't assume that just because something looks perfect from the outside, it is that old adage of, everyone's carrying something that you can't see. That's kind of, again, how I grew up. And I was actually really surprised later in life to learn how many people didn't know what was going on in my household because I thought it was so big that everyone must know. But we really did keep everything a secret. And it wasn't until later that people kind of found out, when I started talking about it kind of freely, that people found out what it was like. So yeah, I guess that's it.
Yeah. Well, there you have it. You heard Kieran talk all things Wish You Were Gone. Stay tuned because when we come back, we'll find out more about Kieran's writing process. Welcome back to Book Hour. I'm your host, CarlyRae, here with Kieran Scott. Now, Kieran, walk us through your writing process. Do you outline, have a whiteboard, use note cards?
I'm super boring. I do outline. I was taught to outline from a very, very young age in my writing career. And I outline really detailed. So I write I think the outline for this book was probably 22 pages long. So really that's the hardest part for me is the outlining. And I often put in dialogue in the outline and descriptions. And it's almost like when I go in to write the manuscript, I have the hard work done and then I'm filling in fun things like details of the house or movements or funny lines or whatever the case may be. So the outlining part is the hardest part for me. And I almost never veer from an outline once I have it. In the case of this book, I actually went through several really major revisions. So I had several outlines and that was not fun.
Now, in your outlines, do you keep track of like all the twists and turns or?
Yeah, I usually kind of bold where things twist, just so that I know that I'm doing enough twisting because I feel like that's what's really satisfying for people. So if I look at an outline and I don't see enough things bolded, I try to go in and see what else I can do. But that's both the hardest and the most fun part of writing a book like this is coming up with the twists.
Yeah. Now, how long did it take you to actually write Wish You Were Gone?
Oh gosh, this is such a story. But basically, I started writing the book about, okay, what year is it? It's 2022. I think I started writing the book about 6 years ago, really, outlining it and coming up with the characters. I had a very short piece of it. I want to say about 80 pages. And like I said, I used to write for kids and I went to my agent with that 80 pages and I said, am I crazy? Should I try this? She was very enthusiastic and said yes. And then I ended up parting ways with that agent for reasons I won't get into, but it was an amicable parting. But then I had to find a new agent, found one, did a full draft with her. And then she and I reworked it a few times and finally came to the conclusion after about a year of working together that we wanted two different books. I wanted it to be like a family story. She wanted it to be more procedural. So then she and I parted ways, again, amicably, because it just didn't make sense anymore. But then after that, I just stopped working on it. Like that was like, I'd been working on it so many times and I didn't know, I'd overhauled it so many times and I didn't know what was good anymore, basically. And I just kind of shelved it for many months. And then a friend of mine who you know by the name of Jen Calanita, she's my writing partner. We read everything the other one writes at an early stage. And she'd read the book as it kind of stands now, along with some of my other friends. And she just kept saying, you can't do this. It's such a good book. You have to pull it out. You have to get a new agent. You've got to sell it. It's good. I swear. I promise. It's good. So she was my cheerleader. And I finally pulled it out again in like, I want to say it was 2019, summer of 2019, and sent it out to agents and was offered representation by a few people, including my current agent, Holly Root, who's amazing. And she sold it that fall. And so it was a really, really long process. But in the end, I ended up selling a version that was like 3 versions prior to the version I finished on. So it was a lot.
Now, did you ever like lose track of anything in that time?
Totally. When I was reading through the version that we ended up publishing, I was like, wait a minute, what happened to that scene where Lizzie had the flood in her basement? But that was just in like some random draft in the middle, and I had taken it out. So there's a lot of junk in a file somewhere that I might use in another book someday.
There you go. Yeah, it won't go to waste.
Exactly.
Now, this isn't your first published book, but it is your first thriller. Does writing in thriller differ from writing in like YA or other genres?
It does for me. I mean, I've read a number of really great dark YA thrillers, so I won't say that doesn't exist. But for me, when I wrote in YA, I was either writing really sweet romances or friendship stories, or I was writing really campy mystery, like very kind of silly and fun and like over the top stuff. So for me, when I was working on this, it was really about getting into real raw adult emotion. And I hadn't done that before. And I found it to be really freeing. So again, like I'm not saying YA isn't deep and raw and emotional, but that's not the kind of YA I was writing. So yeah, this was a very different experience for me.
Yeah. Now, do you ever face writer's block?
I don't know that I've ever had writer's block, but I've definitely had lazy bone syndrome, I'll say, where I know like if I just sit down and start writing a sentence, I will start writing. But some days I just can't force myself to do it. It's almost like when you can't force yourself to exercise. But I've heard people express what writer's block really feels like, and I don't know that I've ever really experienced that.
Yeah. Now, is there anything else you want to add about Wish You Were Gone or writing in general?
I mean, I think for me for this, I would say my message is even if you feel stalled on something, even if someone tells you something isn't good, if you believe in it, keep working on it, because this book would never have been published if, again, I didn't have a friend cheerleading me to bring it out. And now I'm getting such great feedback. It's getting such amazing reviews. It's really humbling. So, I was really convinced it was a piece of crap, and now it turns out maybe it's not. So that's kind of what I would love people to take away from the book.
Yeah. Kieran, thank you so much for joining Book Hour. Before I let you go, tell viewers where they can find you on social media.
I am on Instagram at Kieran Scott Author, and then on Twitter at Kieran Scott. And I think that's all that I have right now. Yeah.
Well, there you have it. Kieran's handles are in the description below. Kieran, thank you so much for joining Book Hour. And for those watching, I hope you have a great day.
Thank you.